much all for being here. I'd like to start out our meeting with a new process of reading our land, water, and people acknowledgement. Our Dakota land, water, and people acknowledgement. We'll pass this around, I'm sure, when the chair is here in future meetings. But this is our first reading of the Dakota Land, Water, and People Acknowledgement at our Community Development Committee. And it goes, the Metropolitan Council acknowledges that the land we currently call Minnesota, and specifically the 7-county region, is the ancestral homeland of the Dakota Oyate, who are present and active contributors to our thriving region. As part of the Metropolitan Council's commitment to address the unresolved legacy of genocide, dispossession, and settler colonialism, and the fact that government institutions, including the Metropolitan Council, benefited economically, politically, and institutionally after the forcible removal of the Dakota Oyate. The Metropolitan Council is dedicated to instilling land, water, and people commitments in regional policy. These commitments support the Dakota Oyate, the 11 federally recognized tribes in Minnesota, Ho-Chunk Nation, and the American Indian communities, representing over 150 diverse tribal nations that call the 7-county region home. And with that, thank you. We'll call the meeting to order. I have the agenda in front of me, and we are moving to approve the agenda now, or with consent? Without objection?
No, we're going to move.
Okay, we are going to move.
We'll take a motion on the minutes.
All right.
The
No, the agenda. Okay, so we are going to take a motion on the agenda before us. Is there a motion?
So
Thank you. Second.
second.
Thank you. There's been a motion and a second for our agenda. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, no. Thank you. The agenda is approved, and we're on to the March 17th, 2025 Community Development Committee minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Move approval.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and approved. Is there any discussion? I didn't ask that about the agenda, but on the minutes. Thank you.
Not discussion in regards to the committee, the minutes, but did we want to include the land use advisory part of the agenda? The agenda doesn't reflect it currently, that we did the land use acknowledgement in the agenda.
Oh, it does not. You're right. And thank you very much. In the minutes, we will be sure
Thank you.
to add that. And thank you. It did not include it in the printed form. Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. Thank you. I should have said opposed. I didn't mean no. Okay, so we do not have a consent agenda today, so we're going to move on to the one item that is on our non-consent agenda, and that is a presentation regarding our Metro HRA administrative plan revisions. And we have Stephanie Paulson here to share with us an overview of the revisions. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and Council members. My name is Stephanie Paulson. I'm the Assistant Director in Metro HRA, and I'm here today to present to you some of Metro HRA's administrative plan revisions. So before starting, I thought it would be helpful for us to begin with just a brief overview of the Metro HRA. I think it's always helpful to ground us in information before we get started on the specific business. There are actually over now 7,300 households served by the Metro HRA in Anoka and Carver County, suburban Hennepin and Ramsey County. We serve over 96 communities, and in 2024 issued $90 million in housing assistance payments to the families. The Metro HRA has 2 plans that we are required to submit to the Department of Housing and Urban Development. The 5-year plan, it's submitted, as it states, every 5th year. We're currently approved 2025 to 2029. And that plan is actually a reflection and kind of a declaration of our long-term goals. So what we decide that we want to prioritize, and you as policymakers decide that we want to prioritize in our programming and in our projects. The annual plan is something that we submit to HUD in October, and that is essentially giving HUD updates on what we're doing to the 2020 or to the 5-year plan, so the 2025 to 2029 year plan. It's saying kind of some strategies that we're using to meet those goals, and then identifies any kind of elements that may have changed or have been slightly revised. A key component of our PHA plan is the administrative plan. And so the administrative plan is our policy document. It includes all of the mandatory and discretionary policies that HUD requires. It is available for public review when we do our annual PHA or 5-year PHA plan policy review with you. And I see you all starting in August for those for that cycle. And then it requires council approval. So we're making some changes to it today, and that's why I'm here to present to you. So I feel like Chair Carter, I think, even said last time I was here, what is HOTMA? And so that's what I'm here to talk with you about today, Chair and council members. There are some historic program changes rolled out by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. These have actually been kind of in motion since 2016, but now we are officially implementing in 2025. So HOTMA, H-O-T-M-A, the Housing Opportunity Through Modernization Act of 2016. It was legislation that is making significant changes to rent calculations and to eligibility for the programs that we administer. There's been several iterations of rollout and effective dates, but essentially what I'm here to talk to you about today are the July 1st, 2025 required changes. And this is what is appearing to be a staggered implementation. The first rollout are things that the PHAs can control themselves without any changes to reporting software that HUD would control, or any changes to software that PHAs across the nation are using. So there isn't just one software company that everybody uses. So all of these individual software companies that PHA use to operate their programs need to be updated and then talk properly or interface properly with HUD and those reporting systems. And so all of that implementation is delayed until those systems can interface correctly. The system updates or the policy updates that I'm here to talk to you about today are really just related to what we can control internally that HUD is requiring that we do. So, like I just mentioned, there's staggered implementation. So HOTMA's final rule related to assets, deductions, and some interim change rules, they are delayed because that is related to reporting and the way the systems will operate and support the changes that HUD is rolling out. What I'm here to talk to you today is essentially some changes to the way that we're going to count income. So prior to HOTMA implementation, what they would do is they'd have a list of required income inclusions and income exclusions, but there were times when income didn't fit in either, in which case PHAs were kind of put in a position to make a judgment call, to reach out to our field office, to confer with other housing authorities. And what HOTMA did is it said, everything is included unless explicitly excluded. So it does streamline the language and makes it easier for operations for the Metro HRA and other housing authorities to say, if it's not on this list, we're going to include it. And I just wanted to give you a couple of examples for HOTMA. So what HOTMA did, Housing Opportunities Through Modernization Act, is went through different types of income, and in some cases there was no changes. In fact, the vast majority of our programs and the way that we were counting income and how we were operating, there was no change. These are two specific examples where the way that we're going to calculate income is different, and I thought that it would be important for me to share with you. Workers' compensation, before it was counted income, pre-HOTMA, post-HOTMA, after July 1st, it's going to be excluded income. We actually had someone in trainer for Nan McKay, which is a housing industry expert, come on site in February of 2025 and reviewed all of these regulations in depth with all of the staff. So managers, I was there, we had our payment specialists, we had our eligibility staff, and so Everyone took time, 2 days, to come to the office and really get some intense training to make sure that we were operating these updates correctly. Another change, which is different to the way that we're calculating income before versus now, is home-based care payments. So families may be eligible for, say you have a person with disabilities in your household, a child with disabilities, maybe an adult in that household receives income in order to care for that person. That income was included before, but is now excluded. So those are the two major kind of changes to countable income that will impact families. And we have already been working, our managers have been doing an excellent job. There's 7 of them. One, Chong, is here tonight, and she's going to tell you, she has an info item later, but our managers in the HR are so awesome, and they've been working really diligently about the way that they're working on communicating changes, working on getting really great staff kind of guidance, and so I'm super proud to be a part of the team because they're doing really awesome work. I'll pause there in case anyone has any questions about HOTMA.
I don't. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Chambliss.
I've been researching some of the changes with HUD and housing, and I know that last Wednesday they revised their website, and even before then there were revisions. So how are you keeping up with the links that are no longer working?
Chair, Councilmember, it's a very, very fair question. We did receive, we had started to notice that some links were no longer available, and then we did receive a formal communication that said that the website had been updated. And honestly, what I've been doing is just going back to check every day. Another page has appeared again, so I don't remember. Councilmember Lindstrom has a really good memory, and so Foster Youth to Independence vouchers, that page is now available with a lot more detail again, and so we've really just doing a lot of checking back. We have weekly calls, weekly national calls, and weekly state calls to really be discussing kind of changes that we're seeing, things that we might be hearing, but it is, we rely on daily notices from kind of a housing industry expert, and then a lot of extra communication nationally and at the state level.
Okay.
Thank you. Councilman Lee.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. With these income changes, do we expect that more people might be eligible and then there might be more demand on our systems?
Chair and Councilmember, it's hard to say right now. I guess I would say that all of the changes that we're implementing for July 1st, we are excluding more than we are including now. So I do believe that families are going to, the number of families that are going to be negatively impacted by our July 1st changes, but that won't impact our program size. We still have the same baseline and voucher. Our budget doesn't change. It's just we will need to watch, I guess, our average housing assistance payments closely as things as we implement in July, but that'll be so slow. July recertifications is when it's starting, and so that might be something that we could share, kind of impacts that we're seeing with HOTMA at year-end when we do our year-end review, or I guess we typically do it in January when we tell you about kind of what's happening.
Oh, thank you.
Go ahead, Councilwoman Chambliss.
Thank you. For clarification, some of those income exclusions are actually beneficial for the residents, right, in terms of eligibility. Can you talk more about that?
Chair and Councilmember. Yes, so in the two scenarios or two examples, I guess I'll go back. These two examples are the two most common examples of income that we previously included, which will now be excluded. And so families, workers' compensation obviously is a shorter, kind of an abbreviated income, which makes sense. That makes, I can track why we wouldn't want to count that because it's maybe not something we would want to project over the 12 months. It's not probably reasonable to project that for 12 months a family will receive it and then the following 12 months, right? For the home-based care payments, that is, as I mentioned earlier, when a caregiver is taking care of a person with disabilities in their household, kind of like a live-in PCA almost is kind of what it is. And that makes sense too. We've received guidance different, and so now that we have formal guidance from the federal government, that makes sense also. So both will be beneficial to families.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for pausing for us. And we, I think, have exhausted our questions on HOTMA, so we'll move on.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Chair. I will now move on to NSPIRE. NSPIRE is the national standards for the physical inspection of real estate. And so I feel like you all have heard us talk about this quite a bit over time also. And really what NSPIRE is doing is it's streamlining the inspection standards across federal programs. So now really everyone is going to use these standards when we're looking at whether or not we consider a unit to be eligible to receive housing assistance payments for the voucher program. Previously, we used housing quality standards, and it was slightly different from NSPIRE. NSPIRE is really breaking down the inspection into three kind of categories: outside the unit, inside the unit, and the unit itself. So if you think about an apartment complex, outside of the apartment complex, maybe like a cracking cement staircase going into. Inside the unit would be the common space inside that complex, and the unit itself would be apartment 101. So that's the way that they're looking at kind of inspection standards. They're looking at kind of the condition, the appearance, the functionality, and then most importantly, things that are health and safety related. Similar to what I did with HOTMA, I wanted to give you all two examples of things that are a change from HQS to NSPIRE standards. So pre-NSPIRE and post-NSPIRE related to smoke alarms, it's really just the location by which our inspectors are going to be looking for smoke alarms. In many cases, there were properties that were already having smoke alarms in the required location. It's just for maybe single-family homes. Like say I owned a rental unit, maybe I didn't have this smoke alarm in the very particular place that NSPIRE wanted it. But like for our bigger complexes, many of them already did. So it's requiring installation on each level and in each sleeping area. Dryer vents is another one, is pre-NSPIRE. We would be looking at kind of if it was a gas dryer or vent, and now if it's gas or electric. And I was talking with the inspectors about it, and would like to give kind of some public kudos to them as well. Our inspectors and our inspections manager have worked really incredibly hard in engaging. Our outreach manager is actually working to kind of get some engagement set up with owners. Like we're just really, really trying to communicate with people these changes that are coming. For the last year, we've been saying, this isn't a fail now, but it would be a fail next year. This is kind of like a housekeeping item, right? An FYI. And so we're doing another event that will be coming up in the next handful of weeks for owners that are interested, just kind of like a Q&A kind of session for people that are interested in learning or if they have specific questions. And we're working through the details of that now. I want to share, I think, in the PowerPoint, these links obviously will work. They did at one point, they may not work now. The NSPIRE ones are back. HOTMA page, the last I checked, was not available. So if HOTMA is not available and these links don't work now, I will be sure to reshare them with you when they are live again. But the NSPIRE links, the NSPIRE page is up. And it's just basically so you can see resources and kind of some general information about what's happening in the world of housing choice voucher for the Metro HRA and other housing authorities across the state. So with that, I would ask that the Metropolitan Council approve the revisions to the Housing Choice Voucher Administrative Plan as described in this report and the attachments. And with that, I'll take any questions you all may have.
Thank you. So we asked our questions on HOTMA. Are there any questions on NSPIRE? Or if you didn't get all your HOTMA questions, now's your chance. Go ahead, Councilman Lindstrom.
Thanks. Just curious, are those inspectors Met Council employees, or do we contract for that work?
Chair and council member, we have 5 Metropolitan Council inspectors, and we have 1 contract inspector. And that contract inspector is responsible for doing quality control inspections of our inspectors' work. They also inspect all of our council-owned units. Just as a conflict of interest, we shouldn't inspect our own units. And so he inspects those as well. And then, of course, if there's coverage, he's wonderful. His name's Joe. And if there's coverage kind of with vacations or any leaves of absence or anything, then he'll cover for our employees as well.
Great. Just a quick follow-up. Can you give me a super high-level overview of how often they're doing inspections? I know you've told me this or told us this before, but just a quick reminder.
Councilmember's chair, Councilmember Lindstrom. So they are out in the community every day doing inspections. Depending on whether or not they're doing single-family homes or they're doing apartments, they could have 7 inspections a day, they could have 17 inspections. It depends on if it's a new unit inspection or if they're doing re-inspections, because for re-inspections, they're just looking for something that had previously failed. So let's say we're looking for a window that was being replaced. We're looking to make sure that window is now operable and working. Our inspections manager, her name is Tammy. She is reviewing zones very regularly as well with our systems, and so it really is, our Metro HRA team is great and wonderful. They review zones regularly to make sure that if there is, let's say, a new project that is built in Maple Grove, the inspector that covers Maple Grove, if now we have a lot of units that are receiving assistance in Maple Grove, maybe we're redesigning the zone that inspector typically works in to make sure that the work and that we're able to inspect units as soon as possible. They schedule their own inspections, they schedule their own re-inspections, they communicate fail items, and so they are wonderful representatives in our community.
Thank you, go ahead.
Once a year, once every couple of years?
Chair and Councilmember, I apologize. So we inspect annually and biannually in some cases. We are doing quality control inspections every month, a random sampling from our systems analyst as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for the overview of changes that impact us. I know that we have the action before us, and I'll ask for a motion there, but I just want to compliment the work. It seems last winter, Councilman Carter and I were in a training session that you were doing for property managers, and I know you were talking about this then, and you've continued to carry this thread of information about a change that will affect people and that certainly will determine eligibility a little bit differently, and also these inspections. And so thank you for the ongoing work, you and the team at Metro HRA, and for all that you're doing for us in addition to just this. So the action before us is that the Metropolitan Council approve the revisions to the Housing Choice Voucher Administrative Plan as described in the report and the attachments, and I'll look for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you. Motion by Councilmember Morales and second by Councilmember Chambliss. I'm looking at Reva. Thank you. And so we have the motion and the second. Is there any discussion or question? If not, we'll vote on the motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Thank you, and that motion is passed. Thank you very much. We'll move on then in our agenda to our information items. And first, before us, we have the Community Development Grants Overview and Annual Impact, and Nicole Clapp is here to share information with us about that. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you. Hello, Chair Carter and council members of the Community Development Committee. Again, my name is Nicole Clapp. I'm the Grants Manager for the CD MTS Finance and Administration Unit, and my pronouns are she, her. So the item I'm here to present today is an info item providing an annual overview and discussion of the impact of our various community development division grant programs. So we'll go over what all of the different program areas are, dive into a little bit more detail within those specific programs and sub-programs, and then give you some information on some new items and programs in community development. So first, within community development, we have 4 main program areas, including livable communities, local planning assistance, regional parks and trails, and special programs. So The bulk of this presentation will focus on livable communities and regional parks, as those are kind of our longstanding and largest grant programs. But as I said, I'll give you a little more information about some of the special programs, new information. So just a high-level overview. Within community development grant programs overall, we have currently 434 active grants with a portfolio of over $310 million. Every year, we run about 10 to 14 annual solicitations that are managed by program staff and supported by the CD Grant Administration Unit staff. Staff ensure compliance with all the federal, state, local, and council grant requirements through ongoing management and monitoring of individual grants. So Livable Communities specifically has been around since 1996, and in that time, the council has awarded over 1,400 grants totaling over $532 million across the various programs, and these grants have leveraged billions of dollars in private and other public investment. So these are the various grant programs within LCA. So there's Livable Communities Demonstration Account, the Livable Communities Demonstration Account Transit-Oriented Development, or TOD program, TBRA, Local Housing Incentives Account, Pre-Development Grants, Policy Development, and Affordable Home Ownership. So I'll give you just some kind of high-level metrics on some of those various programs. So LCDA has had 398 grant awards over its history, totaling more than $221 million. And those grants were made to development and redevelopment projects that link housing, jobs, and services and maximize efficient infrastructure across 74 cities within the region. TOD grants had 139 grants over time, totaling more than $93 million and funding in 18 cities. TBRA grants, so that includes pollution cleanup, investigation, and that includes 619 grants totaling over $164 million in 57 cities. And finally, LHIA has had 264 grants to 61 cities totaling over $69 million that provided new or rehabilitated affordable housing opportunities across the region. Okay, so the currently active portfolio for all of those various LCA programs is 189 active grant projects totaling over $93 million. To date, or as of the end of calendar year 24, $12.6 million had been spent on those projects. $81 million was remaining to be spent in those active awards. So again, that funding is helping to create jobs, affordable housing, and private investment in areas around the region. So a little bit more specific. So in 2024 for LCDA pre-development and policy grants, there were 18 awards that included projects that funded architectural design, stormwater management plans, market and feasibility studies, developer mentoring for mixed-use development. The list goes on. For LHIA in 2024, there were 5 grants awarded that will assist in the creation of 200 new or rehabilitated affordable housing units, all of which are affordable at or below 60% AMI. And again, will leverage millions in private and public funds. LCDA home ownership awarded 10 grants in 2024 that will support the construction and or preservation of 80 affordable homes, leveraging millions in public and private funds. I pulled out a couple of specific projects to highlight. The first one before you on this slide is the Manufactured Home Replacement Need and Feasibility Assessment. This grant award went to the city of Blaine. A relatively small grant, but this was kind of a new area and a topic of conversation that had come up several times in this body about the need for diversifying the types of affordable housing projects that we support. So in this particular grant award, in most cases, the homes that are targeted for replacement are owned outright, and therefore the housing costs are limited to lot rent, utilities, and property taxes. The goal of the project is to maintain the affordability of the homes for the current residents while improving the quality of the homes that currently present health and safety risks to those homeowners. So one example of how this project furthers the city's 2040 comprehensive plan is their goal with an aim to preserve manufactured housing communities within Blaine as an important affordable housing option. So our next highlighted project is the Community Corner. This was an LCDA development award for $1.5 million. The project is to build an affordable housing unit with 31 units, 29 one-bedroom and 2 studio, with creating 14 living wage jobs. So this development seeks to connect with individuals experiencing homelessness, those with complex medical conditions, and people with disabilities. Touchstone Mental Health will provide on-site services. The ground floor commercial space will house a workforce center in addition to a coffee shop and youth programming space. This is the first development on the corridor to align the city's 2040 goals and new zoning code, aiming to enhance walkability and support small local retail. And this was a 2024 grant award. The next one is the 7th Avenue redevelopment project. So this was a TBRA cleanup award for $191,000 to the city of North St. Paul. The project includes 82 housing units and creates 9 FTEs. So the grant was awarded in the round 2 TBRA cleanup funding cycle in 2023. Construction of the building was largely completed and leasing began in November of 2024, with tenants moving in December of 2024. So confirmation testing for the vapor mitigation system was completed in December, and RAP implementation reporting is underway. So this is an example of a completed project that is showing some really positive outcomes for the program community. That is the end of the highlighted projects for LCA, so I will stop there if there are any questions about the demonstration projects or LCA programs generally.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's helpful to hear the summary of these programs. I appreciate you bringing this forward. Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate having one that we found out that it's actually done. It would be nice to have more data on what's done and closed out and actually got built and what gets turned back and doesn't ultimately get built, so that we know kind of how ready and are we really getting the projects in the ground kind of a thing.
Certainly, yeah, that's, sorry, Chair, Councilmember, that is certainly information that I could provide as a follow-up presentation.
In summary, then, the projects there. Councilmember Chambliss.
Yeah, and this is related to what Councilmember Wolf said. Getting that information is really helpful. And I know that it can be challenging to come up with all of the sources of funds needed to get these projects completed. And I know there's a lot of steps, and it's taken a while to get to this place with those that are not completed yet. So, how do we factor in where the developers are in securing, or the cities that are supporting these projects in securing the funds and necessary resources to get to completion?
Chair and Councilmember Chambliss, that question I would defer to the program staff. They're really more at the ground level of these projects being developed and applications submitted against these various programs. We do have information gathering that we do through semi-annual reports of awarded projects, but it certainly, projects change quite a lot over time, and we capture that through amendments that we occasionally bring to this body if that has significantly changed. And otherwise, we're communicating with program staff when we gather semi-annual reporting information to get an idea of where they're at with full funding and implementing these projects.
I know that as we work toward and hear of these projects, we are always looking for more information in that regard. I asked if Director Barajas could speak to that.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, council members. As many of you know, on some projects, we're the early funders in, and so especially I think on affordable housing projects, that's usually where funding tends to be multiple sources are needed for a lot of affordable housing projects. And it's through that amendment process where those timelines can get extended as they work through and getting those done. We have a 3-year process or 3-year grant timeline that can be extended up to a year or up to 2 years administratively. But beyond that, those are the ones that come in front of you. Mm-hmm. As you know, we don't have that many that go beyond that. And we can look into projects that do relinquish dollars, a variety of different reasons that those dollars get relinquished. Sometimes a developer themselves says this isn't the project for me or kind of changes course, and other times it's due to funding and other times it's for a variety of other reasons. So, but we certainly can pull that. But as many of you know, we are those early dollars. A lot of other projects that aren't affordable, usually we're filling in gaps that help build out some of the things around public realm, help build more community space, help build more green elements into a project that is already moving, or might also have local funding, whether it's TIF or through some other sources as well. So those private development projects are less likely to have items fall through necessarily. Affordable housing projects tend to be the more difficult ones to fully finance.
Okay, thank you.
Part of the reason we're in this business, of course, so we have the extension process for a reason, and fortunately, staff is able to extend those where they're not going too far, not beyond that 2 years. Mm-hmm. And then thankfully, we don't see many more than that. So thank you. Mm-hmm. Any other questions or comments before we move on?
Okay. Thank you. Regional Parks and Trails. So program overview for Regional Parks and Trails. Unfortunately, we don't have data going back to the beginning in the 1970s of the Regional Parks and Trails system. Our conversion to electronic files just didn't go super smoothly. So we have reliable data going back to the beginning of the legacy amendment, so 2010. So all of the historical information is from 2010 to present. So over that time period, we have awarded 864 grants, totaling over $567 million to the 10 regional park implementing agencies. And those agencies are listed there on this slide. Again, Regional Parks and Trails has a variety of sub-grant programs, including Legacy, the Park Acquisition Opportunity Fund, Regional Parks Bonding, which we match with council bond dollars, the Competitive Equity Grant Program, which comes before the CDC every year to decide on the parameters and the funding. So that's a mix of interest earnings and council bond dollars. Operations and maintenance is state funding, kind of a quasi-grant program. And modernization is relatively new from the 2023 session, as is hazard tree removal and ash replacement. Right. So the current portfolio of regional parks grants, we have 245 active awards totaling over $217 million. To date, or as of the end of calendar 24, $44 million had been spent on those projects, with $173 million remaining to be spent. So that number looks like a pretty large divide. We did get a pretty significant amount of funding in 2023, so those projects are sort of just getting off the ground and being implemented now. We also got quite a bit in pass-through dollars during that session too. So. There is $36 million in fiscal 25 funding available for new projects that are currently under development by implementing agencies, so yet to be encumbered to a specific project. They're still refining those project descriptions in a few cases. And funding is helping to improve facilities, acquire land, engage with the public, and advance equity in the regional parks and trails system. Highlighted projects for parks. So the first one is our very first modernization project to be completed. So this was Baylor Regional Park, the boardwalk replacement project for Carver County, and the grant award was just over $350,000. This project, sorry, catching up to my notes here, was completed under budget. They're reallocating a little bit of remaining funds to complete a staircase repair project in Lake Minnewaska Regional Park. And just as a reminder, the modernization program was specifically awarded to address climate change adaptation, accessibility improvements, recurring focus areas from community engagement, and natural resource restoration. So this is a really good example of a project that is now complete. Okay, next one is also a completed grant. This was for the city of St. Paul through the hazard tree and ash replacement appropriation. The grant award was $66,000. And this grant removed 457 hazardous trees in Como Regional Park, Mississippi Gorge Regional Park, and Crosby Farm Regional Park. So this funding has been vital to the regional park implementing agencies. Most of them have spent almost all of their money already. We've had really positive outcomes, lots of great information on these grants. So hopefully we continue to see more money in this space from the legislature. Yeah. And finally, this is a newer project. This is the Lebanon Hills Regional Park Plant Propagation Program and Master Gardener Partnership for Dakota County. This is a Parks and Trails Legacy Fund grant for $211,000. And this project will report measurable outcomes through capturing the success and numbers of native plant plugs that are grown in the new greenhouse, and the number of Master Gardener community volunteers engaged, and total number of volunteer hours. In addition, this project will include the Dakota County Outdoor Career Success Program, which engages approximately 15 at-risk youth annually in summer job shadowing opportunities. And fun fact, all of the photos from the highlighted projects are from the actual projects. All right, local planning assistance. So this is a program that provides assistance with local communities, updating their local comprehensive plans. The last round of grants was issued in 2016. Those have all been closed out, but we are anticipating a new round of grants in 2026. There are ongoing conversations, which Angela has been having with LUAC and other council members about kind of the shape and funding that will be contributing to this program moving forward. So more to come on that from both Angela and Heather during budgeting conversations. Previously, the grants ranged from $10,000 to $84,000 to 104 eligible communities. And that's just a little recap. Nothing has changed from actually the last time I presented this information to you. So in 2016, $1.86 million was awarded. Most of that funding was spent by the local communities that received it. And again, we'll be looking forward to a new round in 26. All right, so one of our new programs under that special programs banner is the Community Tree Planting Grant Program. So in the 24 legislative session, $2.5 million was appropriated for a competitive program available to cities, counties, townships, and regional park implementing agencies. That application is currently posted. We are receiving lots of interest, lots of new signups in web grants to complete applications. It closes on April 18th. So we'll be doing application review and scoring with grant agreements anticipated to go out in early summer. The project should be completed by June 30th of 2027. And those awards range from a minimum of $10,000 to a maximum of $500,000. And currently, there is a bill that was introduced in this session that would provide an additional $3 million for this program. So we are watching that closely and hoping to see that funding make it through the end of session. And finally, the HUD Pathways to Reducing Obstacles, or PRO housing grants. So we were recipients of an award in federal fiscal year 23 as well as federal fiscal year 24. So currently our federal fiscal year 23 grant is active. Our action plan has been approved. We are engaging in that work, really getting things off the ground now with our local partners, Hennepin and Ramsey County. So they have significant sub-grants to help do a large portion of this work. There will also be sub-grants going out to local communities for policy and programming. First award round is anticipated this fall. And then the federal fiscal year 24 award of $5 million is just a continuation of that work, so it'll allow us to do more sub-grants, more community engagement, more best practice development in this space. So we're very excited. We were the only applicants to receive an award out of both of those award years. So kudos to the folks that worked on writing those grant applications. They did a great job. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. And again, it's wonderful to receive this overview as we prepare for the grants that will be coming before us, and having this knowledge of what impact has occurred over time helps us as we envision the impact we want to have for the future. I'm looking to see if anyone on the council has a question. I would dare to ask a question about the local planning grants, which I know help us to help our partners to update their comprehensive plans. And it seems as though, that is definitely warranted for communities who do not have planning staff or who lack the capacity to make those updates as required every 10 years in that cycle. I know we talk also about communities' capacities to apply for grants during the 10-year cycle. And I don't know whether it's appropriate to ask this question here, but I'll just put it on the table, and that is, are we looking for ways in which we can design assistance to happen during that 10-year period so that we are better able to gain the uptake in our grants that we would like to see across all our communities? And I'm looking at the director for that one. Forgive me, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair and council members. I would defer to Lisa as
Thank you, Nicole.
having been the local planning assistance coordinator way back when, and having in-depth knowledge.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, council members. Certainly one of the things in all of our grant programs that we're looking to do is just simplify our application process, just to make it simpler. Local planning assistance grants are not competitive, typically is how we've set them up. And so we really are just asking them for a work plan, how you're gonna spend our money, really keeping it simple, more so we can audit our expenses and ensure that what they're spending their money on is what they said they were gonna spend their money on. But we have on our agenda today, local planning assistance work plan update. So Angela will be up here in just
There's
two
more.
turns and can tell you more about our plans for overall technical assistance, and at a high level, some additional things that we are working on this year to support the local planning process.
Right.
And then we'll also have future conversations here at this committee, in addition to set program guidelines, eligibility requirements, et cetera, for staff proposals for the 2026 round of local planning assistance supports. But I'll let Angela talk more about that when it's her turn.
Well, that's absolutely fair. Thank you very, very much. And thank you, Nicole, for a wonderful presentation and overview of all of this work that you all do. Thanks to the entire staff. If there are no further questions, then we'll move on to our next information item. And that is the 2025 work planning, Met Council Regional Parks and Trails team coming up. Colin Kelly will be representing that work along with Kevin Phan. Thank you, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, Chair and council or committee members. I'm Emmett Mullen, the Regional Parks Manager, and I just came up to introduce my staff. This is, as you said, Colin Kelly to my left, and then Kevin Phan, both park planners. We presented our 2025 work plan in March to the Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Commission. It was very well received. We gave you many looks at kind of the same information. There's 3 attachments. Different work plans, but I won't get into the complexity of that. I'll just say we're teeing up a lot of great work for the coming 4 years, and Colin and Kevin, take it away.
Thank you, Emmett.
Thanks, Emmett, and good afternoon, council members. I'm Colin Kelly, as was stated, planning analyst, and I'm here with Kevin Phan, parks planner, and we're here to share a brief information item on 2025 Regional Parks and Trails work planning. As an information item, there is no proposed action at this time, but we are interested in your feedback and suggestions as we begin to implement Imagine 2050 and the Regional Parks and Trails Policy Plan. We want to know what you think should be prioritized in the year ahead and if there are any critical elements missing. There are at least 3 foundations for the Parks and Trails work planning efforts to date, including Section 9 of the 2050 Regional Parks and Trails Policy Plan, ongoing Met Council Parks and Trails work, and agency-identified regional topics. Taking each of those in turn, Section 9 of the 2050 Regional Parks and Trails Policy Plan is a 4-year work plan focused on policy plan implementation. The 17 items that are in the work plan are organized into 5 themes that relate to different sections of the policy plan and the actions therein, including accountability and research, protection and restoration, culture, trails, and finance. This work plan is attachment 1 in the staff report. Ongoing Met Council Parks and Trails work is also an important source for what we must take on this year and in future years. This includes the day-to-day work of planners, parks ambassadors, and finance staff, including long-range plan reviews, coordinating equity and outreach work across the region, and administering grant programs. This work plan is attachment 3 in the staff report. Finally, we'd like to focus some attention on agency-identified topics, which have a close relationship to the policy plan's work plan and the work groups that were organized at the beginning of the policy plan update in 2022. 2 examples include trail system coordination and strategic funding. This area of future work is also intended to explore regional policies and efforts related to subclassifications, cost-effective research methods, and greater advocacy at the state level. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Kevin.
Thanks, Colin. So with that foundation of the Agency Council identified priorities, the Parks Policy Plan, and just our day-to-day work, we took a lot of those and essentially just followed up with some discussion with our regional park implementing agencies and to ultimately create a process of drafting a upcoming work plan for the year of 2025. So some of the highlights are from Attachment 3, which is that Agency Council work plan for 2025, as well as the Parks Team work plan, which is Attachment 3. So some of the highlights from Agency Council work plans include identifying shared goals and projects at the regional level. So an example that was mentioned was snowmaking facilities and coordinating that across the region, discussing new strategies to increase funding of the system, exploring relaunching topic-specific work groups, including climate and natural systems, trail system coordination, and strategic funding, and beginning to prioritize the American Indian Advisory Council recommendations that were made during the planning process. Some of the Parks team-specific highlights include the implementation of Imagine 2050, integrating art and policy, which was an initiative that was nested within the Parks team and integrating that into the Parks program, working with our Parks Ambassador program and updating the Adventure Guide and developing new outreach tools to work with underserved communities, developing a park visitation forecasting tool, and continuing continuing our work on the GIS improvement project, especially looking at the policy plan housekeeping amendment. Overall, this kind of helps create a roadmap for our future partner meetings with our implementing agencies, and this is kind of just what we're hoping to accomplish moving forward. Moving on into discussion, we just wanted to open up the presentation and hear your thoughts, more specifically what you would like to prioritize in the list of projects, if there's anything missing from the work plans that were identified, and just generally what other thoughts or comments that you have about the work plans. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Looking to the council for questions. Go ahead, Councilmember Chambliss.
Thank you. I like the emphasis that is placed on, improving our parks and trails. I noticed that you had something that I always had a question about, and that's the snowmaking along some of the trails. I know at the Mississippi Regional Trail, there's some snowmaking. And in the winter, the snow kind of carries on into the walking trail. And I know that there have been some updates for the Mississippi Regional Trail to, I think, kind of widen it and make some more space for bikes and pedestrians. But I think that might be something to look at so that people are able to walk all year long if they want to. Just a little suggestion.
Appreciate that. Chair, council member, that's a great suggestion, and we'd be glad to pass that along to those who are making snow in our system, and to be thoughtful about other types of users besides cross-country skiers or other types of users out there, to make sure that walkers are able to safely cover those spaces as well.
Yeah, and the safety part is the aspect, because you actually have to walk in the street, so that's part of it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the emphasis. Go ahead, Councilmember Wilf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If there's research capacity, looking at if people are getting their overall outdoor needs met in the region, because we always look at the regional park system in isolation. But, there are some people who spend all of their time on baseball fields or tennis courts or whatever, so they're getting their outdoor stuff. But when we look at are people happy with the park system, we're always just looking at our little narrow slice of it and having a better understanding of the global recreation and are there some people who just aren't in the regional park because they're spending all of their time in other parks? And are people happy with the choices that they have would be a good thing to know. I suspect that they are, but when we only look at the data for our parks, we kind of miss the overall picture.
Thank you, Chair, Council Member. I know, I think in 2026, the visitor study is something that's anticipated to occur, and I think something that is planned is additional focus groups. Not sure how much it'll address with your question of, recreation outside of the regional system, but that might provide some insight as well.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, with the ubiquitousness of cell phones, we have a lot more data at our fingertips on where people are, and so if we could kind of include that in our plans for that bigger visitor study, I think it's been a question that we've wanted to answer for a long time, but now we have actually tools that we might be able to do it without spending an arm and a leg.
Thank you very much for bringing that up, because it is a question of overall usefulness and appropriateness, and whether in fact the variety of needs are being met as well. Director Cameron?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Council.
That's okay. But that question also leads me to the comment that I want to make. And I'm going to warn you that I bring up this example a lot, so you might hear it again in CDC. But about 8 to 10 years ago, the city of Rochester undertook a major park renovation, and they had tried to revamp the system so that it would be equitable access and taking in mind the new immigrant and refugee population in Rochester and the growth there. And so they revitalized their park system, were very excited, and they found that there was not a huge difference in usage over time. And so what they went back and engaged with organizations and with community members and said, why aren't you using the parks? And they said, well, we don't feel welcome there. And so, you know, as Councilmember Wolf is talking about digging into that research and we're prioritizing outreach, it's really important to think that we're coming with one cultural lens about how outdoor spaces and parks are used versus what the communities might come with and their lens of how spaces are used, and making sure that we're bridging that gap. That burden falls on us to make sure that we bridge that gap, not on the community. And so, like I said, I bring up that example a lot because it perfectly illustrates how we can sometimes miss the mark when we're developing these. And so making sure that we're really including those community voices directly from people who may not be utilizing our park system, but we know that are located in areas where we want to bring them into our park system.
Not just what should be in it, but how should it be configured and how should it be used. Thank you. Other questions? Councilman Lynch?
On that point of equitable usage, I'm reminded Councilmember Wolf, you said, I'd like to see the results of these livable community grants, see if they're actually happening. This likely has been provided to this committee before, but I'd love to see some of the results from the equity grants from the last couple of rounds, to hear the results of those projects. I love all of the emphasis on coordination between the different implementing agencies, whether that's creating snow or looking at like which parks have mountain bike trails, or how each park system is handling e-bikes, or coordination around wayfinding. Like, I find that very different from park to park. Sometimes, you know, when you're at a corner, there's a map and it says you're at 22L. And you can see where exactly that is. Sometimes there's a map and someone has like taken out their Swiss Army knife and made an X. Swear to God, I think I'm kidding, but the people do that. Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes there's no map at all, and you're just kind of guessing. Maybe coordination around fishing piers, you know. I'm sure there's a million different things that maybe that's already happening, but maybe we could do a better job. So those are some of the things that just come to mind for me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate that.
Well, I really appreciate all of the comments that have been made and the feedback that's been given. We appreciate your bringing this information before us and asking the question, you know, what could be missing? Are the priorities in line? And thank you to all of the council members for the suggestions you've made. I'm sure we'll hear from you responses regarding completed projects, results of the equity grants, and thoughts about how we are assessing how we're comprehensively meeting the needs of our communities, as well as some of the other things that you'll be bringing to the fore as a result of the comments that have been made here and the questions that have been asked. And I see our director is here at the table. Don't know if you've been there the whole time, but I just want to open up in case.
Sneaky.
In case, gentlemen, is it all right if we go to Emmett for a few comments?
Chair and committee members, I just wanted to thank you for listening. Those were great questions. Councilmember Wolf has returned to MPOSC as your liaison, and while we really miss Councilmember Vento, it's great to have you back. We had an excellent meeting this past Thursday, and looking forward to the future. And I've taken notes from what I've heard, and we will be back with more information. I'm really excited about I think it's going to be a 2026 equity grant program launch, and we have a decent amount of money. And so I think that focusing on Councilmember Cameron, the whole idea of welcoming people into the system, particularly people that don't have the tradition, is going to be an emphasis. And so a lot of good work to talk about as we move into 2025 and beyond. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And I do want to say thank you to our presenters. Please forgive me for mispronouncing your name, Kevin. It's Phan. Thank you. And thank you to you both. So we are going to move then to the next presentation, which is Local Planning Assistance Work Plan Update from Angela Torres. And I apologize for jumping the gun. I think there's some things inside your presentation that we'll love to hear as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair and committee members. Good to see you. I'm Angela Torres, a Senior Manager of Local Planning Assistance. I think that you've all seen me many times, but it's good to be in front of you again. So over time, the committee has expressed a lot of support for providing really intensive technical assistance and simplifying the comprehensive planning process and all of those other kinds of things that I've taken note on over the years. And we've developed our work plan kind of with those priorities and needs in mind. But if there are things that you have in mind that you're not seeing here, I do want to hear from you and look for that kind of feedback as we're walking through the presentation today. So we're always somewhere in the regional planning cycle. Local governments are right now in the implementation part of the cycle. They're still implementing their 2040 plans, which stay in effect until they work on their 2050 plans. The adoption of the Regional Development Guide means that we move from policy and system planning to issuing system statements, leading into comprehensive planning technical assistance programs and the local comprehensive plan updates. I want to share a bit more about what that means for our work plan and yours. So we will be kicking off the local comprehensive planning process, and we typically do that by issuing the decennial system statements. So while they start the local planning process, they are also specific to each community, so they take quite a bit of work to compile and pull together. What they do is that they explain the impact of the 2050 policy and system plans to each local government. System plans include transportation, regional parks and trails, and water, which is inclusive of wastewater, surface water, and water supply. In addition to the system plans, each statement includes elements like the vision, values and goals, community designations, regional growth forecasts, and affordable housing need allocations that are critical to doing the planning with the system plans. We plan on distributing system statements in mid-September this year to allow for the dispute resolution process to conclude by the end of this year. That's a 90-day process. It's outlined in statute. Disputes usually revolve around forecasted growth for the most part, and they're largely resolved through conversation and compromise with the local governments and our sector rep staff and our other technical staff, especially as it relates to forecasts. When that's not possible, as I mentioned, there's a formal dispute resolution process outlined in statute, which includes the Land Use Advisory Committee, and we work with the Land Use Advisory Committee and let them know what their role is and get them up to speed on that as well. The comprehensive plan updates then are due on December 31st of year ending in 8, so the next one, 2028. We're working to update the local planning handbook for the 2050 cycle. For the past 8 months or so, we've been actively scoping out what changes are needed. We're testing the existing site, and like we did in 2015 and 2016, we'll do user testing for any new website features, looking at navigation and usability from the people, the planners that it's really built for and intended to help with that technical aspect of the comprehensive planning process. We're working on technical resources like the minimum requirements checklist, maps, status tracking, and community pages and other things. We've already held focus groups with local planning staff on key tools like the minimum requirements checklist, and we got their feedback on clarity and conciseness and reasoning why we need to do specific requirements, a little bit more expansion around explanations and things like that. So we are working on that with local governments now. We do plan to relaunch the local planning handbook with the system statements issuance at the same time in mid-September of this year. We'll continue to build resources within the local planning handbook over time as we get further into the comprehensive planning cycle. So it's not just a one and done, we launch it and we're done, but it's a resource that's consistently maintained and updated. And of course, we add more tools as we have them available. We will also relaunch the Planet program, which in the last round offered a variety of events and resources, including a free full-day planners conference with AICP credits, which is the Planners Professional Accreditation, free. Not only the conference, but the credits as well. Between 2016 and 2018, all of those events and resources were offered really to help local governments understand planning requirements, as well as sharing planning resources to get the most out of their planning efforts. So we did kind of a basics of like, these are the minimums, here's how you meet those, and then get more out of your plan track after that. Want to make sure that they understand the minimum requirements first, but then building on that to take advantage of the planning process to really do more to meet local vision, local goals, and address local planning issues. Oh, I didn't advance the slide. I'm sorry about that. Here is the beautiful slide that I planned for the planner program. So I couldn't identify the work plan without really emphasizing the sector representative program. It's one of the most important and visible programs that we have. Right now, we have 8 sector reps on the map covering all 16 council districts. Sector representatives are all experienced local planners who are knowledgeable and experienced with the council and its various programs and policies. We are key contacts within and for the council. We provide planning and technical assistance and develop close working relationships with local planning staff for all of the local governments. We also provide technical assistance to council members, as I hope you each know, and local government staff in a variety of other ways as well. I mentioned new planning program and funding, so let's talk a little bit about what statute authorizes for planning assistance. Under Minnesota statute, the Met Council can provide grants, loans, or other types of assistance to support communities in updating their local comprehensive plans. We generally don't get a lot of interest in loans, but we do get a lot of interest in grants. And that's what Nicole was talking about earlier, is the local planning assistance grant fund. So as communities are providing, updating their local comprehensive plans, we do provide assistance, and that assistance criteria is developed based on need and resources. So these statutes enable not only the traditional planning grants program, but also a new program for small communities that I'll talk about in a few slides. For the 2040 Planning Grants Program, we did do a look back. So we have for the 2008 and the 2018 planning rounds provided non-competitive planning grants for local comprehensive planning. We do have eligibility criteria that we develop and update every round, and we have a plan for that grant program for the 2028 plans as well. We do know that eligible local governments have come to rely on some funding assistance for comprehensive plans. The program has never been intended to provide 100% coverage of all local costs for that planning process, but it is meant to provide some assistance and some funding to help with that we know it's a very big project for all of our local governments, and it is intended to defray some of those costs. As I mentioned, we did do a look back on the grant program as we started working on updating the eligibility criteria. We heard a lot about consultant costs, the level of effort that's needed for the plans, and found that local governments included many different things in their budget summaries for what their grant funds were used for. For example, some included staff time, others didn't, so some parameters for reporting in the next round might be helpful for future lookbacks. We also heard a lot from small cities, small communities that still struggled to do comp planning just because of an overall lack of capacity and technical resource availability. So even some of our grant programs, so funding alone, what we found was that funding alone wasn't enough to assist the smallest and most in need communities complete their planning process. It was just burdensome in a way that they still weren't able to manage, and so we're looking at how to address that. We will be here in May to talk more about the Planning Assistance Grant Fund program in more detail, including more background and draft eligibility criteria that the Land Use Advisory Committee has started evaluating and reviewing with our former chair, Councilmember Wolf, and our new chair, Councilmember Morales, who had to leave, of the Land Use Advisory Committee, really ushering those items forward. I mentioned small communities planning program. So for the first time, we're proposing to provide direct consultant level technical assistance for the region's smallest communities to help defray that burden of updating the comprehensive plans. The focus is on the communities with the least capacity to manage the work, no local staff, for example, which many of our smallest communities don't have. We would help the local governments physically update their plans through authorization by the council and through local adoption. So this is essentially a proposal for us to provide planning consulting services and engineering consulting services in order for those smallest communities to complete their comprehensive plans. We're working right now on analysis for eligibility criteria with the Land Use Advisory Committee to identify communities that we can serve, including the levels of service and internal staffing that might be needed to provide that level of service. We believe that it's possible to update 20 to 30 comprehensive plans in-house over a 2-year period for the eligible communities. We'll be back to share more about this program in May as well, and that would include the draft eligibility criteria that LUAC has been considering. LUAC won't be making recommendations at their May meeting because we will have a lot of new members coming on board, so we'll be doing some onboarding and getting them up to speed on where those discussions are in process, and of course we want them to have an opportunity to provide their feedback on that as well. So with our next steps, on this slide, I tried to focus on the information and business items that will be in front of you for review. This doesn't include everything, like the work that the sector reps do every day, for example. And there are embedded projects within the bigger projects that you see here, like the tool and resource development for climate planning assistance or for the natural systems planning that are underway as part of the local planning handbook update that you might not see here, but you'll be able to hear more about when we come back in more detail about that in May. But this schedule does include the major local planning assistance projects, including the planning assistance grants, the small communities planning program, system statements, the local planning handbook update, and other program and guideline updates that will be in front of you for informational purposes or for decisions over this year. While we've already been working on these programs and projects, we're very excited about this work and the level of service that we're planning to provide to help with the local comprehensive planning process this year. And with that, I'm happy to hear any additional thoughts and feedback that you might have, other things that you had in mind. They may be things that we have and we're just not shown because this is a very high-level work plan, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very, very much. And it is exciting to see the level of support that you are planning for comprehensive plan updates. I'll look across to members to see if there are any questions or comments. Go ahead.
Thank you,
Councilmember
Madam
Wolf.
Chair. I appreciate the work you're doing with the city planners on figuring out the checklists and making sure that everybody's speaking the same language. Have we done any work to identify ways that we can minimize costs on cities by not having extra requirements? Was that ever part of the discussion?
Chair and Councilmember Wolf, it's always part of our conversation because we never, for us, it's not so much about cost, but communities generally don't want us to tell them to do things, period. And so we do try to not include anything more than we absolutely have to. We do, though, have a regulatory role that we do have to implement, and we have systems that we definitely own and operate, and the sewer system in particular, that we have to have very careful planning around. It's a very complicated process. Comprehensive planning is exactly that, comprehensive, and so it is very broad and it is very big picture. And local governments include some things that we don't require, and we want to encourage them to do that because they have their own local issues that they're trying to tackle. But all of it gets kind of wrapped up into the comprehensive plans that communities only do once every 10 years. One of our local planners said recently, and it will just stick with me for the rest of this planning cycle, I'm sure, it's very hard to be an expert in something that you do once every 10 years. And we really take that to heart. That's why we're trying to provide so much assistance, so many resources, so many tools, so that we can kind of walk communities over that line, specifically with the minimum requirements. We provide on the local planning handbook as much as we can to meet the minimum requirements. We already have the data. We already have things. We would consider this complete if you submitted this map to us. We provide them a whole slew of maps. So we do as much of that as we can. We always try and take that tact as opposed to worrying about cost, because the fewer requirements that we have, that will inevitably make things easier for local governments anyway. So I hope that answered the question.
Go ahead, Councilmember.
Thank you.
Chambers.
Just wanted to say thanks for, putting together support for the small communities' technical assistance for their comprehensive plans. I know that's something that we've been working on for several years. And so I just wanted to acknowledge the thanks for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I also want to say thank you for that. I think that a lot of what you just shared about the role you'll be playing in the comprehensive planning process to assist our communities applies toward some of the difficulties that we see, over time. I'd even suggest that in the work that you're doing to help small communities, any communities in that regard, but particularly those small communities for which the programming is set aside, that it may be you'll be able to glean ideas and suggestions as to how those communities can use resources at the Met Council in the coming years of their plan. I don't know that that will fully satisfy, what we have heard with respect to the difficulties that some communities have applying for certain of our grants. But I know that a part of the concern could be knowledge about, the grants themselves and what particular characteristics of a community might apply to particular grants. So if those are discussions that can be had during that planning process, I think it could really help us all, A, to establish that relationship of communities knowing us and us knowing them better, and B, to help guide or to help actually create a navigation pathway toward some of the opportunities that can exist at the Metropolitan Council. So I really appreciate the overview you've given us of the plan to help these communities, all our communities. I have one question. I don't know if you shared this, but Can you tell me, if I missed it, forgive me, what percentage of our communities use planning assistance?
Chair and committee members, planning assistance grants versus planning assistance, all of the communities use our assistance. We
Right,
have
right.
so many technical resources that all of the communities do that to some level or another, or we use it on their behalf and then help them do the task. For the planning assistance grants, I don't know the percentage, I can give you some numbers. We provided, I think it was 65-ish individual communities with grants. Last time, we distributed the vast majority of the funds that we are allocated in that program. We only had, I think, maybe 1 or 2 communities that didn't receive the second half of their grant.
After.
Yeah, and that's just because of ability to complete it. It's they are some of the communities that we're looking at helping with the Small Communities Program. Like I said, grants alone weren't able to provide that service. So eligible communities is, I think, around that 65 number.
That's great.
Out of 188 individual jurisdictions. We also had 3 levels of grants in the last round. We have 2 counties that have land use authority over the townships within their borders, and Scott and Carver County do the planning for all of those communities. So they received a larger amount of grant funds just because they are serving 10 townships-ish within their boundaries. We also have one group in Dakota County that we call the Collaborative, or they call themselves the Collaborative, where a lot of the townships and the small cities in Dakota County get together and kind of pool their resources and do like a single consulting contract for all of their work. They qualified for that larger amount of the grant funds last time too. So we had a base kind of grant amount as well. So the collaboratives and the counties received $84,000 last time each, and then communities received, I think, $32,000. That was kind of the baseline grant fund. And then we, at the last minute, had another funding from the council where they added some additional funds to the program, and we created a small cities program where they received, small cities with eligibility criteria for all of those things, by the way, received $10,000 each. So overall, I can't tell you the total, I don't have the number off the top of my head.
You gave me so much more than I thought you had,
Oh.
right? And I do appreciate it. It was very, very helpful to know the breadth of the support that we provided.
Yep.
Thank you. Any additional questions?
This is
Councilmember Wood.
not a question, Madam Chair, but just a comment. The grants, while substantial, don't come anywhere near covering the costs that the communities incur. For example, the city of Lakeville spent $300,000 on just consultants for doing their plan, not including the staff time and whatnot. And the Dakota County Collaborative Communities, the county put in money to help them as well, but the individual communities still put in at least $6,000 per township towards the cost. So it's a lot of money that.
An investment in future, for sure. And I appreciate that we're not bearing the entire cost, but I'm glad for the help we're able to provide. Councilmember Lindstrom.
Yeah, in the city of Falcon Heights, a tenth of the size of Lakeville spent a tenth of what you spent, 35,000 on a consultant. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation in the months ahead about the small communities planning program. I imagine we're going to be hiring a couple people to do that, and that'll probably be on the work plan for 2025. It just occurred to me, so some of the townships and small cities in Dakota County participate in the collaborative, and they put in somewhat dollars to participate in the collaborative, I imagine. And just thinking about the eligibility for the small communities planning program, where 20 to 30 eligible communities, they will not have to pay anything, correct? Yeah, so there might be some communities that participate in the collaborative and put in some amount that otherwise would be, perhaps, we'll see, eligible to get a no-charge planning through the Small Communities Planning Program. So I don't know if all those, you probably have already been thinking about this, and we'll have deeper conversations about this in the months ahead, but it just crossed my mind.
Yeah.
He's a deep thinker.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yes, Chair and committee members, we are trying to structure it so that communities are eligible for one path. So small communities are eligible for the planning consulting services, which, by the way, we are planning on providing engineering services as well, which is usually where the majority of consulting costs happen with the small communities. Well, with honestly, any of the comp plans. So if a community is eligible for the small communities program, they wouldn't be eligible for the planning grant fund, planning assistance grants, but then that gives us a little bit different scope of the planning assistance grants. We don't want to give any less than we gave last time, but we also have some ideas on how we can structure that program as well to incentivize things like early completion, which helps staff. Which helps, in 2018, not last December, in 2018, December of 2018, I think I went back and looked, and we had over 80 full comprehensive plan updates to review in December. And so that is incredibly difficult for staff across the council, because it's not just us that facilitate the process and we review land use and other things, but it is also the transportation staff and the water staff and the park staff and the housing staff and, the forecasters. Like, it's everyone across the council that works with local governments on their comp plan updates that are impacted, because the council is constrained by Minnesota Statute 1599, which says that we have to review things in 15 business days and provide response to local governments. It's incredibly important for us to kind of phase some of the submissions. The Small Communities Program, if we are doing those, that will help with that. Incentivizing early completion can also help with that and some other things. So we have a lot of ideas. We'll be back in May to share some of those with you.
And I'm sure that Councilmember Lindstrom will have a lot of questions for you.
I'm sure you can count on it.
Yes.
I'm taking notes.
Looking forward to it. Yes.
Thank you very, very much. Did I see Councilmember Chambliss's hand? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So we have one final item on our agenda, and that is the Bring It Home Statewide Rent Assistance Program. Terri Smith is here, and Chong Lau.
Thank you very much.
Hello, Madam Chair and council members. We're happy to start off today with HRA business and close with HRA business today. But we're excited to be here. I'm Terri Smith. I'm the director of the Council's Housing Authority, and I'm here with my friend and colleague, Chong Lau, who's an HRA manager of PBVs and quality assurance. So I promise you're going to have some repeat on the first few slides, and you're probably sick of hearing about Bring It Home, but Chong has some exciting information to share about the engagement we've done around project-based vouchers, and Bring It Home has the potential to offer and award lots of project-based vouchers. So I think that's part of the purpose of our being here today. But I'm going to kick us off just to ground us a little bit. And our statewide rent assistance program, again, Bring It Home, was authorized by the Minnesota legislature in 2023 through a portion of a quarter-cent new quarter-cent sales tax. So potential to bring 5,000 new vouchers to Minnesota, about 900 or more for the Metro HRA, and our eligibility amount of this funding is about $15 million. And so Minnesota Housing has issued the RFP for this program, and applications are due April 21st. We don't need council action to submit the application. We will need council action down the line when we know our funding amount. There will be a budget amendment associated and then a board resolution allowing us to accept the funds. So that will come to you later in the year.
Good to see it rolling.
Yes, right? We're excited for that too. So in terms of eligibility, just to review one more time, this program will serve households with annual incomes up to 50% of area median income. So that's the same as a federal housing choice voucher program, but that are paying more than 30% of their household income on rent. So we're going to be certifying and verifying that people are in fact rent burdened before they get assistance under this program, and that's in the law. The second bullet there is that priority shall be given to households with children and annual incomes of less than 30%. That is also in the law. And then the third part that's in the law is that program administrators, which is us, may establish additional priority populations based on local need. We've been back and forth with our funder on this, Minnesota Housing. We have some bill language proposed at the legislature this session to allow us to serve both families with children and other populations based on local need at the same time, instead of going through our entire waiting list, families with children, before we're able to move to example to single adults possibly experiencing homelessness. And so we're making progress on that, and we're excited about that. You've seen this slide before too, but the law outlines that we can use either our existing procedures, use amended procedures, or develop alternative procedures for the Bring It Home program. Under use of our existing procedures, we would operate it just like our federal housing choice voucher program. And our thought is that we will operate the tenant-based portion of these vouchers just like the federal Section 8 housing choice voucher program. We are able to make amendments, so you will see us later, another action item that will be coming before you down the line is some administrative plan amendments for Bring It Home. So although this isn't a federal program, it doesn't have to be in our administrative plan. We think it's easy to put it there to make it clear to the public the differences between the housing choice voucher and Bring It Home. So we'll be back before you in the coming months on some of these amendments that we'll be recommending. And then the third, in terms of using amended procedures, so this is a second option, and we can pick more than one option in our application to Minnesota Housing, but we would operate it just like the housing choice voucher and project-based voucher programs with certain exceptions or amendments. And so some of the amendments, and Chong will talk a little bit about some of these, is instead of offering a tenant-based voucher after 1 year to project-based voucher households, we would offer every 3 years. We could offer project-based vouchers without a cap on the percentage of PBVs in a given development. So the federal rule is we can't offer more than 25% of a building or a development with project-based vouchers unless it meets certain criteria. We could waive that with the Bring It Home program. We could remove, for example, requirements for a subsidy layering review and environmental review for Bring It Home project-based vouchers. The federal rules require an environmental review, for example, for existing housing where there's no rehab or construction activity. And so removing some of that red tape for developers and from a paperwork standpoint, while still ensuring that the units are safe within our communities, is a flexibility we could add to these vouchers. And then the third option would be to develop alternative procedures. So essentially creating a whole new program design, and we're not recommending that at this point, just because we can be efficient while administering these vouchers within our current infrastructure, using our current documents. And, I think even, what we don't want to do is set one voucher up against another, so having lots of benefits to one voucher or another. And so using our current procedures with a few amendments we think is beneficial. We do know, though, getting 900 vouchers will take us, a few years to deploy these resources. So we do have opportunities down the line to, develop amended or alternative programs or procedures down the line if we decide that's a good idea to do it. And we think is something, we talk to you as policymakers about that. But for now, we're not recommending that option. And Chong's going to talk about some of the project-based voucher engagements. So we've done engagement, and as you all know from our conversations at last year's committee meeting, project-based vouchers remain in high demand, and this gives us an opportunity to really award some additional project-based vouchers. So I'm going to let Chong take over for the next several slides.
Thank you, Terri. Yearly, we held PBV engagement sessions with owners and also tenants to learn more about their experience, about the project voucher program and their preferences as well, and the recommendations for change. Last month, March 6th, is when we held our last owner engagement session about the PBV program. We had 81 attendees, and this included property owners, managers, developers, nonprofits, housing authorities, and also community members. The topics included an overview of the Bring It Home program and also a discussion about project-based vouchers.
This picture is Chong at last year's owner PBV briefing, so it's a great picture, Chong.
Yeah, thank you. We wanted to hear about what's working well, what can we improve, and especially to consider in that with the Bring It Home vouchers, we will be project-basing some of them, and so we wanted to hear their thoughts and input. In the engagement session, we asked what types of developments are being considered. Many were interested in both new construction and existing housing. We also asked about the minimum number of PBVs owners were interested into applying. In the last RFP, we required a minimum of 5. Overall, we heard the majority wanted over 10. We also asked about priority populations. High numbers were shared about homelessness, elderly, and families with children. Also mentioned were veteran, disability, general occupancy, reentry, restorative justice, American Indian families, people leaving domestic violence shelters, immigrant families, and youth. We also asked about what we can improve about the PBV program. Developers wanted to receive PBV awards as soon as possible. This helps speed up the PBV award process to ensure additional points in their housing applications, and also an easier application process, making applications more accessible, paperless system, and also fillable fields were shared. We also asked about turnover vouchers. Earlier, Terri mentioned a little bit about the turnover vouchers, and there is no requirement to provide a tenant-based voucher to bring home households. And so we wanted to hear the owners' experiences with the turnovers at their units and what their preferences would be. Most would like to offer the option for a tenant-based voucher to turnover to residents, and also one shared about how we should look at our average waitlist time and issue based off of that. And so we were thinking about 3 years to issue based off of the turnover. We also asked about PBV options for Bring It Home. Earlier, Terri mentioned about the 3 options. 1, to use the existing procedures of the PBV program. 2, making some changes to the program. And 3, developing alternative procedures. Many owners preferred using a mix of both 1 and 2, existing and alternative procedure. Making some changes to the PBV program. And owners supported a mix of. owners supported removing PBB regulatory requirements, environmental review, subsurface laying review. With the last year, early 2024, we held a tenant engagement session about their experience of living and moving to the project-based voucher units. So we really wanted to hear about the resident experience. In this session, 10 residents attended. We asked about the property unit preferences. Many residents shared they prefer single-family homes, townhomes, or duplexes, really preferably a yard with green space. And also we asked about location preference. Residents favored areas with low violence, access to public transit, and proximity to shopping, proximity to family, and good schools were also important factors, and a strong preference for communities that embrace people of color. We also asked about the satisfaction levels of living in PBB units. Some residents were happy with their current units and intended to stay for a stable future. Some wanted to explore transferring to a housing choice voucher option, but were concerned about paying a higher rent portion. With the project-based voucher program, tenants pay a minimum of, or they pay 30% of their adjusted gross income towards rent. With the housing choice voucher, you're able to pay more based on the unit that you locate. And I will share this with Terri.
Thanks for that, Chong. And Chong led all of these engagement sessions, so I want to thank Chong for all her work on that. But, it's important that we're factoring in community representatives and owners and tenants in our decisions around these Bring It Home vouchers. It's the largest pool of vouchers we've ever received. We've also had engagement with the American Indian Advisory Council, along with some consultants with lived experience in homelessness around these vouchers extensively. And so, and then this is probably I think this is our fourth time before you, and we've been to the housing work group to talk about this program and what we're thinking and what the law says and where our flexibilities lie. So we think this chart sort of represents what we've heard from people from around the region and stakeholders about how we're thinking about using these vouchers. And again, we don't know our funding amount, and the funding will be awarded, and then once that's awarded, we can figure out how many households that will serve. But based on what we know today, we think we'll get about 900 or so vouchers. And having ranges in this chart, we think provides us with a little bit of flexibility. But we're thinking project-based vouchers anywhere from 250 to 350 of the Bring It Home vouchers. And our thinking on that is we use some of the information that Chong shared about engagement sessions with tenants and owners about having access to green space. And so maybe having some priority for single-family homes in that RFP process. That developers are really prioritizing specialized populations. Chong mentioned, I think one developer said they had general occupancy developments coming on board, but most were serving specialized populations, people experiencing homelessness, people with disabilities, veterans, victims of domestic violence, et cetera. And so our thought would be, once we get the funding, maybe issue an RFP for 100 vouchers, see what priority populations we get, then we can tweak the process for the next 100, because Chong currently and her team, they manage 55 project-based voucher contracts. And so having the number of contracts to be awarded needs to be considered as we're bringing all these on board. So we think having the ranges here provides us with some flexibility. We're thinking 300 to 350 for tenant-based vouchers, so those would be issued to people on the waiting list. Primarily, we would think about allocating some to the Metro Transit Police Homeless Action Team. So you'll recall we dedicated some vouchers to them in the past through our mainstream program. We have 253 of those, and they're all full. And so dedicating some additional resources to the Homeless Action Team. And just to set some context additionally for this, we got 218 emergency housing vouchers during COVID, and it took us 3 years to fully get all of those in use. So getting 900 is a big lift. So we're really trying to think about how we can issue some of these vouchers, both tenant-based and project-based, for existing housing for families that are a lease in place. So maybe they're receiving another type of assistance that's going away, and we could give them a voucher to remain housed. The Hennepin County Schools to Housing Partnership is a really cool one. And you may recall from past conversations, we have Homework Starts with Home partnerships that are similar to this in both Ramsey and Anoka counties. And so this would be a partnership with Hennepin County to provide rent assistance to students and their families that are either at risk of or experiencing homelessness, so they can remain in the school that they're in to achieve success. And then we're thinking about an additional commitment to Anoka County Homework Starts with Home. So we have a handful of vouchers dedicated to that partnership already, but the need is vast, and so we're thinking about dedicating an additional 25. All of these initiatives and vouchers need to be outlined in our application, and Minnesota Housing can choose to approve or not them. We're confident that we have good partnerships in place and that this will get approved, but I guess we'll see what happens. So I don't know if anybody has thoughts on this before we have one final slide for you.
Thank you.
The reason why there's not a Ramsey County Homework Starts with Home allocation is because we already have a partnership with them. Is that correct?
Yeah, Madam Chair and Councilmember Lindstrom, yes, we already have a partnership with Ramsey County through Solid Ground Partnerships. So we have a preference on our waiting list for housing choice vouchers for that population.
Thank you. Other questions before we move to the final slide? I think we're ready to go.
So the final slide is on our waiting list opening, and most of you already know this probably, but we're opening our waiting list starting this Wednesday for the first time since 2022. We're opening for a week, so it will be open this Wednesday through next Wednesday, and folks will have to apply online. We have staff at 15 different community locations to help people apply to the voucher program and help them navigate the application process. We will also have staff available here at Robert Street for people that walk in and need assistance with that process. And the reason I bring this up today, it's important, but secondly, we will use the same waiting list for the Bring It Home program. So we anticipate that opening this waiting list will allow us to have enough applicants for that program, at least initially. And then you all adopted a 10% waiting list placement preference when we were here back in March to dedicate 10% of waiting list applicants to people that self-identify as American Indian. And so that's actually going into place with this waiting list opening. We presented at the Metro Urban Indian Directors last week about that preference, and we're presenting Wednesday at the sister group in St. Paul about that preference this week as well. And so that's what we have, Madam Chair, and we're happy to answer any additional questions that you might have.
Thank you very much. The questions from committee members?
Right here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. I appreciate you coming to the housing work group, which I chair, and several of our members are here, Wendy and Chai, and Councilmember Morales was also participating. And also, a couple of my colleagues from the Humphrey School met with you about the new program and got some really good information as well. I do have several questions, actually, and I just wanted to wait until the end for those. And some of it is not just questions, but some of my thoughts and what I've heard from residents about making sure that they have quality homes to live in, and that inspections are very important to have for them to, have a good quality of life in their homes. So I know that's something that is always considered, as well as those requests by some of the engagement to reduce the required regulations. Regulations are there for a reason. So, of course, we would be using cautions in considering all of that important feedback. You kind of touched on this a little bit, and that is, I believe it's related to project-based vouchers and being able to find partners and landlords who are willing to or able to provide homes for the use of the project-based vouchers. So you mentioned that it could take several years for those vouchers to get used. So with the allocation, 200 plus for project-based vouchers, 250 plus, that could take some time. But it sounds like for some, they would like it more than 10 homes. So is there a number of organizations that are really interested in participating? Is it 5? Is it 10? How did that work as far as your list of potential landlords? And also, where are these properties located, and where is the greatest need for the homes by the landlords?
Those are really good questions, Madam Chair and Councilmember Chambliss. I think we had a couple of things. There were several landlords that were interested in PBVs for existing housing. So it means they have a building already that they own and they're looking for project-based vouchers for that existing building. So I think that helps us deploy the resources sooner so we can get contracts in place. When we're looking at new construction, and several of them also have new construction projects that can be 3-4 years down the road because it depends on what other financing. So we'll probably have some requirement in the RFP that they have their financing within 2 years like we do with the regular PBV program, because what we don't want to do is shelve a bunch of these vouchers for years when we have landlords that can use them today. In terms of location, I think there are landlords that were attended the engagement sessions. Many were nonprofit owners. Some were consultants that work with affordable housing developers. And I would say developers that are serving specialized populations, such as people experiencing homelessness, people with disabilities, veterans, are more nonprofit housing providers. And so they tend to have projects, whether existing or new construction, that have supportive services in place to support people that need those services. And so, but in terms of location, we don't really know that information yet until we get the applications from the developers. But did we ask any questions about location? I don't think we did.
There, not location, but there were a few developers that reached out. One were interested in a renovation project in Brooklyn Park. And then one, I believe it was in Riverdale, Coon Rapids area, in a senior high-rise development. And so those are some locations of interest.
Okay, thank you. Madam Chair, the other question that I had was related to the turnover tenant-based voucher. I'm wondering, can you elaborate a little bit about what those turnover scenarios would be? And I don't know what page that was on in the presentation, but I think did you pass it?
That's it?
I think it's towards the end. There was a page that specifically addressed turnover vouchers. That's it right there, yeah.
So Madam Chair and Councilmember Chambliss, as we think about our turnover vouchers and our housing choice voucher and project-based voucher program currently, we have all of our vouchers are in use most of the time or all the time, right? So the only way a tenant can get a voucher is if one family goes off, another can come on. And when a family goes off the program for a variety of reasons, we have this voucher and we can decide, do we want to give it to somebody on the waiting list? Do we want to give it to somebody that's already living in a PBV unit that's affordable to move? Or do we want to absorb a voucher from another housing authority that we're billing for? So those are the three primary ways we can use that voucher. And it's like a balancing technique, because the last several years, most of our turnover vouchers have gone to project-based voucher movers. So there are people, again, already living in a project-based voucher unit that have assistance already, and they're taking the available vouchers to move to a location of their choice. So essentially skipping the waiting list. I don't want to say people are intentionally doing that because that's not what I mean by that, but it means they're not going to people on the waiting list. And so our thinking around, instead of offering, because people that are living in a project-based voucher unit after 12 months can call Metro HRA, I'd like one of those tenant-based vouchers, and if they've lived there 12 years, the regulations, the federal regulations require we give that PBV mover a voucher before serving the waiting list. And with the Bring It Home program, we have the flexibility to decide, do they even get a tenant-based voucher? Or, you know, if they're living in a project-based voucher unit, or we could create additional rules to have them wait. For example, after 3 years, they could be eligible for one of these instead of after 12 months. So that's what that's getting at. Does that answer the question?
Yes, yes, that answers that question. And I think that is all that I have.
Madam Chair, if I might address one more question, or you mentioned about the safety of the units. I think, you know, housing authorities across the state, some of them are thinking about waiving the inspection requirements, which is something we could do with this program. But we didn't make that as a recommendation because, number one, we want to make sure residents are living in safe units. Number two, we don't want owners to say, oh, I'm going to only take this voucher because you're not going to inspect my unit, right? I don't want one of these federal vouchers because you're going to do an inspection. And so some of those kinds of things, we think it makes a lot of sense to keep them the same just to make sure folks are living in safe units. So you made a good point there.
Thank you.
So the difference is the inspection versus the environmental review for project-based vouchers. I thought I heard you say that you had decided to recommend waiving that review, correct?
Madam Chair, that's correct. We're talking, our recommendation would be to waive the environmental review and the subsidy layering reviews for project-based vouchers, knowing that most federal and state, well, all federal and state funders are requiring those pieces as part of a project. And so as developers get financing for other reasons, they're already doing those things. So it slows things up so much for us. It can take HUD 3-4 months to do a subsidy layering review, which slows things down. Same with environmental review. So that's why we're recommending that those things be waived for the project-based program.
And you see it happening already in another layer of the project. Thank you. Thank you very much. Are there other questions? I really appreciate your coming before us and sharing this information. We all do. We are at the end of our meeting and looking forward, I think, all of us to enjoying a spring day out there.
Excuse me,
So-
Chair, I
I'm
have
sorry.
one question,
go ahead.
if you have time. I would just like clarification on the issue of the minutes that Councilmember Morales brought up. Did he mention LUAC?
I think he meant the land acknowledgement.
Yeah.
It should be part of the template for the.
Okay, okay, thank you, because I looked, we
He
had
did
seven
say
items,
land use.
7 items in the.
Yeah, we
okay,
just
yes,
didn't see it up at
the
the top.
template is brand new, so we are transitioning
Yes.
into that.
Yes.
So that's why that was omitted this first time, but it'll be on the next minutes. Thank
I
you for
understand.
clarifying that.
You actually had written it on mine, but it wasn't on the printed agenda, so.
Correct, because
Thank
that's a
you.
brand new template since the posting.
Understandable. Thank you very
great.
much.
Thank you.
Anything else before we officially adjourn? Then we are adjourned.
Thank you.
You're right, he did say land use. And then